Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the fabulous places that it can take us. I have an extraordinary guest today. He is a filmmaker and an author. I haven't seen him in a couple of years since we were at the Cannes Film Festival together in 2018. And I'm so excited he took the time to chat with me today. James Bird. Hi, James.
Hello, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. So you are an all-around creative. I have read your fabulous book, The Brave. I have seen your movies, We Are Boats and Honeyglue. And you have an incredible imagination from your work. You are just so prolific. And I'm sure you've had a few adventures in your life where you've done maybe one or two things you never thought you would. So will you please share one of those stories with us today and let us know where it took you?
Sure, I have so many, and they range from rated PG, rated R, rated uh-oh, rated don't say this on the internet. But like mine starts off with I'll start off simple and I'll go on, I'll gradually move. But I never thought I would actually have a home, because when I was little, I bounced around, and I lived in a car a lot with my family, and we were always homeless. We're living with relatives. And I remember there was a time when I was a kid where I was thinking, like, I'm probably never gonna have a home, like how they do on TV and how they do in books, of people like actually having a place to call home. I didn't really have that ever. And um, I'm building it now, which is so crazy, because now that I'm older, I have a home. I live in a house. I've never lived in a house before. I don't know anyone in my family that's lived in a house before. So it's pretty crazy how I never thought I would actually have. And maybe that's why in some ways I went to books and movies so much. Like, I poured my life into them, because in there, even if I didn't have a home, if I was like sleeping in the backseat of a car, um, in a story or in a movie, I could immediately have a character living in a house. And the house is huge, and you don't have to worry about rent or mortgage or anything like that. You could just, put that person in a house, which is so cool.
That is, yes. We're going to get back to your storytelling in a second. So I want to ask you a little bit about your childhood. So you grew up nomadic. How about we use that word? Um, so where were you born, and what was your parents' situation that you were moving around a lot and you didn't have that kind of stability that that most normal kids do have?
Yeah, so I'm Native American. My whole family is from Minnesota, mostly Duluth and Grand Portage. But I was born in Sacramento, California. I was born there, and so I guess that's Northern California. But by the time I was a teenager, we trickled down all the way to Southern California. So I probably lived in 50 different places from there. And the reason why, I guess, is like my mom wanted Minnesota was pretty racist towards Native Americans. Mm-hmm. She was kicked out of high school for being Native American. She loved the place a lot, but she didn't like the people. Like, the people, it was really mean to her. So the first chance she got to get out, she did. And so I think she joined the Job Corps, and that took her all around the world with Bob Hope. I don't know if you know who that is. Mm-hmm. The old entertainer. But she was in the Job Corps doing being a dancer. And she was, since she's Native American, she was like Lady Chippewa.
Okay.
Dancing for the soldiers. And so she ended up like coming to Hollywood, and I never met my dad. So a big reason why I was nomadic is um, when my mom got pregnant, he didn't want, he already had a kid with my mom. I have an older brother who's 3 years older. Don't even know the real story behind that. It's hard for my mom to talk to, but um, when I was born, he didn't want another kid. If that's my dad, I don't know. So my mom has been raising me and my brother and my sister, who's 3 years younger, all on her own. With, you know, the furthest she went was 10th grade, I think, in high school.
Mhm.
So she bounced around with jobs just as much as I did in my life. I've had like over 50. She's probably had more. Um, just trying to evade child services, not get caught because they would split up the family.
Mhm.
Um, and trying to just get us like the best life she could without going back to Minnesota, because it was really tough for her over there. Um, so I guess we all just became nomadic in that sense of like, uh, we had no choice.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess, not having a dad and not having a home kind of led me to storytelling and writing books and writing movies.
And do you think it made you a resilient person because there is so much disappointment and rejection in the entertainment business? Um,
Yeah.
do you think that that experience in your life helped you um, overcome, rejection and disappointment?
Yeah, I think right away, like from day one, I experienced disappointment and rejection. Like, my dad didn't want me, and um, my whole uh, concept of like stability was gone. Like, cops are supposed to be like this protectors, but I only knew cops as a kid. They were the people that took all your stuff and threw it outside and locked the door with a new lock. Like
Mm,
we got evicted from every place we've ever been. So I
mhm,
grew up like thinking cops were villains, because why would they do that to kids and all that? So rejection in the film industry, it didn't phase me at all. I don't like I I call that a win, like because if someone rejects you, you probably don't want to work with them based on how or why they rejected you, anyways. So I've never cared about rejection that way or disappointment in that way. And this industry is full of disappointment and rejection. But I'm a pro at it. I'm a pro at failing, so none of that stuff bothers me at all.
yeah.
And that's probably why I'm resilient. And I'm Native American, so I have resilience, like 99% of us were wiped out with disease and war. So
Mhm.
I'm like I'm like that 1% that won't go down. So
Wow.
yeah, resilience is built in me, I guess.
And you said that you never thought you would have a home, and now you do have a home. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how that came about and where you are
Yeah. So
and how it feels?
yeah, I never thought I would have any, like I never saw my mom in love. I never saw her um really even happy to a besides about us kids. I never saw my mom really happy. So I grew up not thinking I was gonna ever be uh, happy like the movies or happy like books. And I had everything working against me. Like the stuff I did as a kid, I should be in jail, and a lot of my friends are in jail. And like I can't believe how lucky I got. And I never met my dad, and I didn't have any concept of like love. And now I have not only a home, but a house, a huge house in one of the, most beautiful cities. It's like right on the beach of Massachusetts. Um, I have a wife that I fell in love with that I didn't ever see that happening. And I met her at a bar in Hollywood, and like our first conversation was, I told her that we're going to be married in 10 years, and 10 years later we're married, you know.
Wow.
and and not having a dad, I'm a dad now, you know, to a 3-year-old, and I'm going with no, you know, job training, no experience, no, you know, no uh um
Yeah, no frame of reference, because
yeah,
even
no from,
even people
so
who
like,
have bad parents, at least they have an example of what they're not going to be.
yeah, yeah.
You
So I'm
know?
going with a clean slate, just like on the job training, you know,
Yeah.
and it's the best job I've ever done. It's the most fulfilling, satisfying, hardest,
Mhm.
scariest, but yeah, I would quit everything to do this, to be a, you know, a father easily. But I'm lucky enough to I work at home. I write whenever, you know, the baby's asleep or the baby's visiting grandma,
Mhm.
so I could continue to keep working.
That's amazing. Well, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you found happiness in your life and that you found a home, not just a house, but a home with a loving wife and a child. It's such a beautiful story, especially considering the hardships that you had to endure as a child. And that's the thing, like no child asks to be born, no child asks for the situation that they're handed. But it seems like it made you persevere and it made you so resilient and it turned you into the incredible artist and storyteller that you are. Which brings me to, I want to talk about your films first because the films happened before you wrote your book.
Yes.
So your first film was called Honeyglue, and that was I feel like that was almost before its time because it has to do with a trans character, correct?
Mhm.
And it came out on the precipice before the trans activism became at the forefront of the news and what's happening in the world today. So, how did you come about writing a story like that? What inspired you? Because um, that was one of the first pieces that I saw that I was like, oh wow, what an interesting subject matter. And it wasn't until a year or two after that that it became the forefront of this movement that's happening
Mhm.
in society today.
Yeah, I just even though it wasn't hitting the screens yet, like I didn't see it in the screens. I lived in Los Angeles, so I saw it all the time in real life. And I was always wondering why, you know, in films, you want films to represent real, you know, you want films to mirror what you see in real life to make the film feel realistic and authentic. But we weren't seeing that in films at all.
Mhm.
And, you know, I wanted to be, since you know I was an independent filmmaker, I was like, well, I can do it, you know, like I can do it. And it's funny you say it was ahead of its time, because a lot of like in the distribution phase and all that, a lot of them were like, you know, even saying this is a little bit too progressive or a little bit too ahead of its time. You know, like give it a year or two, which is crazy because it was a year or two later that it became, you know, a
Completely relevant.
common topic. Yeah, but it's funny because no one wanted to pull that trigger right away. But I saw it everywhere. I have friends that are trans. I have friends that are non-binary. You know, and I was like, I wanted to give people a glimpse of like, look, it's, I mean, beauty is beauty, love is love. Like none of these labels matter. None of them that we actually, you know, some people are so into checking each box and being comfortable in a box and
Yeah.
only liking the people in that box, you know. And so I wanted to make a movie that would actually not preach or not convince, but at least show people like, look, there's people just like you that look nothing like you and act nothing like you. But at the core, they just want, love.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful film. And then the second film you made is called We Are Boats. And that was a really profound piece as well, in a completely different sense. First of all, it was the first vegan film ever made, correct? So not only was all craft services vegan, but every prop, every piece of costume, everything that was used in the film was vegan. So as a vegan, that was very impressive to me because it is challenging. And there are so many things out there that you don't even realize have used animal products in them. So that's like an incredible feat in itself to achieve that. And the fact that that was important enough to you that you're like, no, if I'm making this film, I want this to be one of the elements that we incorporate into it, because it's challenging, especially when you're an independent filmmaker. You don't have a big studio budget, and to spend the extra time and energy outsourcing those things, that's amazing. So number one. And then number two, the piece was really profound as well. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got the idea? It's about I can say the beginning, right? It's about a woman who's killed, a woman who's killed, and then she is kind of sent back to Earth to help people transition. Is that a good transition to the afterlife? Is that a good description or not quite accurate?
Yeah, she either sets you on course to like either dying or making a change that keeps you there. It's basically looking at life as like agents, like social workers,
Yeah, so she's kind of like an angel, I guess. So where did you get that idea? How did that one come about?
It's kind of like I remember, and this is going to sound weird, and I'm not comparing myself to an angel at all, but it came from a very simple concept of I was going to 7-Eleven. I was walking to 7-Eleven, and there was a homeless guy on a city bench, or a city bus bench. And as I passed him, I said, are you hungry? He didn't say anything, right? And so I don't think he heard me, or he didn't acknowledge me. So I went in there, I got my coffee or whatever, and I got him like, an apple, a donut, and something else, right? And I walked back, and I was walking home. He was still there. So I sat down by the bench, and I was like, oh, I got you these. I don't know if you're hungry, but if you're not, give them to someone else or whatever. And so we started talking, and he was a friendly guy. He kind of told me what happened, his story a little bit. And I was just it was like 5 minutes talking. That's it. But when I got up to leave, he was like, hey, I just want you to know that I haven't talked to another human in over 30 days, like over a month. No one said a word to me, and I was going to kill myself because I didn't know if I existed anymore. And he's like, so just you sat down and talked to me. Thank you so much. Like, I don't want to die yet. And I was like, holy shit, right? So I thought, what if a stranger, can just go into a life, say a couple things, and that will determine, like, is that all that person needs is a couple words, or is that person on their way out and they need preparation, either one, like, and I'm no angel, I'm super flawed. So I wanted my main character to be super flawed as well, like almost like it's a job, like you're just a social worker. You might be good at it, you might suck at it, but you're trying.
I love that story. I'm like about to cry. I find that so beautiful, because it's true. Homeless people are so dehumanized. And,
Yeah.
and just acknowledging somebody. And a lot of times the person doesn't even need to be a homeless person. Just the
Oh yeah.
isolation of the pandemic alone has driven a lot of people towards suicide. The suicide rate is up because of that isolation. And,
I know.
you know, and sometimes all it takes is just one person reaching out and saying, like, I
Yeah.
see you, I acknowledge you, I understand you're hungry or you're in pain or you're in need. And exactly, like, you don't have a magic wand, you're not a wizard, you're not a fairy godmother, but just having a 5-minute conversation
Yeah.
validated that soul in order
Yeah.
for
And
him to recognize that he's still worthwhile.
yeah, he just wanted to like he just wanted someone to know he existed, you know.
Yeah.
Because I mean, time isolation, it breaks you down, it breaks everybody down, you know. I can't believe some of the stories I read about because of this isolation, the pandemic. um
Yeah,
it,
I was watching Dr. Drew in an interview, and he was talking about the isolation. And he was saying, like, as human beings, we can't handle it. And he was comparing it to the prison system. And like, the worst punishment you give the worst criminal is solitary confinement. And a lot of people, especially in cities like New York, a lot of people live alone. You have a lot of single people living by themselves in a very small apartment. And
yeah, little boxes. And
so it takes a toll on our psyche, it takes a toll on our mental health. Yeah, we weren't going through the pandemic when you came up with that, but it's true. Like, we all need to connect with people. And I love the title, We Are Boats, because it's like we all help each other get to where we're meant to be.
yeah.
So, and both Honeyglue and We Are Boats are available on Amazon, so everybody should go check them out. We'll have the links below. And that brings us to your book, The Brave. And so I read this book. It's a fabulous book. It's a YA book, but it's not just for young adults, it's for everybody. And it's about a boy who is half Native and goes to live with his mom. He's living with his dad because his dad's family was wealthy and agreed to take care of him, but his dad wasn't necessarily the best dad, struggling with alcohol abuse, and he didn't know anything about his heritage and that he was Native. And he's sent to go live with his mom, and that's when his life kind of changes, but he also starts to flourish as an individual. He was struggling living with his dad, and probably because of the environment, but also struggling at school, struggling making friends, which a lot of us struggle with.
So my main character has a condition where he hears anybody that speaks to him, he counts up all the letters, right, and
That's
has to
right.
word them back out. And it's like um, not diagnosed as like OCD, but I think that's maybe the closest thing uh, for conversation that we can call it. But so he has that, and that's why it's really hard for him to make friends and teachers to include him in anything, because at first glance it's kind of fascinating, but it gets annoying really fast. Like, you can't really engage with someone that keeps blurting out the same number, blurting out every single number that you speak. And so I didn't have that, but I had learning disabilities as a kid. I couldn't, every assignment, I would take every single word from that assignment on the sheet, and I would mix it all up and come up with a story, and I'd write a story only using their words,
Wow.
only use, and sometimes I would borrow a vowel from this one and do that. So my brain would constantly do that, which maybe in today's age, there are teachers that would like connect to that and then find a way to teach me. But where I grew up and what the schooling system was for me is I was just kicked out of class. I was put into like the remedial classes, or I was just sent in the back, and I was passed so I didn't have to flunk, but I never did anything. They never expected anything from me, so I didn't learn anything.
Did they
So that's
accuse
how
you
it
of
was.
not taking assignments seriously? Like, did they think that this was something that you were doing on purpose to be disruptive, or did they realize that you had a disability that made your brain work differently than the majority of the other students?
So at first, they definitely thought I was just being a smartass or whatever, and but it got so bad that they knew it was real when I started to get medication for it, and then I was starting having seizures in classes because of the
Oh.
medication. So it was, they realized it after the fact that I needed help. But yeah, I was trying all these new medications because nobody really knew what was wrong with me.
Mhm.
The closest I had like MRIs, EEGs, all these CAT scans. Closest thing they said was just like I have too much lightning in my brain, and
Like the
so
synapses are firing too fast or something like
yeah,
that?
way too much, and the like surrounding pocket full of water that like brace I forget what the word is, but like makes the impact on your brain when the lightning strikes.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, Mine didn't have any water, so it was just lightning, lightning, lightning. Um, so I was busy like math. Math was crazy. Like if you ask me right now, like, do I understand math? I'll be like, well, okay, additions, yeah, subtractions, yeah, like the basics. Times tables, yeah, but my brain has to make it a game for it to
Mhm.
understand. And
Mhm.
that's as far as it will go, because after that, if there's too many numbers, like my brain starts to make up numbers as characters and their families. And then it gets way too confusing if you add too many. But like
Wow.
the 7 clan and the 4 clan, like
Yeah,
it's
that's fascinating because I was so curious when I was reading your book because a character exactly his unique gift or disability, depending on how you look at it, is whenever somebody speaks, he counts the number of letters in the words and then blurts out a number before he can actually respond to a
right.
sentence. Just for the audience, for everybody watching, so they understand what's going on. Yeah. So I was wondering because I was like, is this even a real thing? Do people have this? Is this something that exists, or did it just kind of come from your imagination? And I guess,
I sat next to a guy in one of my classes for troubled kids, um, that had that. And I was completely blown away, going, "Oh my God, that's so cool how your brain can do that." And
yeah,
he was like, "I hate it. I would trade anything in the world to get rid of it." So it's cool seeing from the outside, even me that had learning disabilities, see something as a superpower, but that person that has it wants to get rid of it and wants to hide it from the world.
yeah, because I was thinking it's like a Rain Man kind of thing, right? You know,
Huh.
how Dustin Hoffman's character was like, could just look at numbers and boom. And yeah, it's a superpower, but it's also considered a disability when going back to Honeyglue, when we want everyone to be able to fit in the box.
Mhm.
And especially the education system is set up in a way that everybody has to kind of fit within this box. And if you don't, you're labeled as, special needs, troublemaker, put in remedial class, or even kicked out of school. Um,
Mhm.
so I find it so fascinating that you were able to draw on your own experience, and then you actually knew somebody who had this and built a whole story around this character. And then also, um, you were saying like, it's a type of OCD, and a lot of OCD comes from our own anxiety.
Yeah.
So do you think, just kind of looking back, you probably weren't aware of it at the time, but the nomadic life you were living and the constant evictions and the constant on the go lifestyle that you were raised with, do you think you had a lot of anxiety because you were never able to settle? And that also contributed to your brain firing so quickly?
It's funny because now, like, when you're a kid, you think everything's fine. You don't know something's wrong
Well,
because it's
yeah.
literally all you know. So I always wondered why my mom was always crying. You know, I always wondered, you know, because to me, I was like, okay, you cry if you get hurt, you know, or if something makes you sad. But there's, you know, she was always crying, you know, and now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I had it so bad at times, you know, like, you know, I remember my mom kept crying. I had a birthday and our car broke down and we were in a parking lot and my mom was just crying in the car and it was my birthday. And obviously there's no cake, there's no presents, you know. That's when I think we lived in that car or with an uncle on his couch or something. But um, so in this one day, it was pouring out, it was raining, and my mom was crying of sadness. And then a guy ran up to the car, knocked on the door, knocked on the window, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys want to come into the? Is everything okay? Do you guys want to come in and use the phone?" And it was a Payless shoe store, just a teenage employee, just some kid. Um, so we went in there. My mom was telling me like we don't really have anyone to call, but he's like, just stay in here, you know, get dry. And he this employee threw a little birthday party for me, and he's like, pick out any pair of shoes you want, and they're yours. And
Wow.
I went to the employee back room, and I watched, I think it was like Lethal Weapon for the first time, like because they had a TV, you know, the
Yeah.
VHS. And I remember thinking this was such a great birthday party. And so like hours later, my mom was crying for a complete different reason, happiness. So
Yeah.
I was always wondering, in one day, how can you go from crying of sadness, crying of happiness? Like there's a lot of crying I don't know, because it just doesn't mean you hurt your knee or elbow, you know?
Yeah.
So now that I'm older, uh, I know how awful she had it and how anxious, like anxiety, you know, like she would always create this like rocking and buzzing, like you know,
Mm.
and that's anxiety. And during this pandemic, I had my first real case of anxiety. Like I knew it existed, obviously, and I knew how real it is, but I was hit with something that I thought was a heart attack, panic attack, you know, and I actually slept zero for like 3 or 4 days. And I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what it was. And now I have so much more sympathy for people with anxiety because sometimes you don't know why it hits you and where it's coming from and what it wants. And that was like, I've been through a lot. I've broken a lot of bones in my life. I've been through a lot of trauma, but that little stint of anxiety was the most painful thing I've ever been through in my life. And on the outside, if you look, my life was happy. Like I have a really good life. But the anxiety, who knows, probably crept up from 20 years ago, you know,
Yeah.
from being as a kid
Some
and
sort of
just
trauma
got,
was triggered from your
yeah.
past. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. I know. And that's the other thing too with anxiety. With a broken bone, you can see it. You can, like if it's somebody else, if it's somebody close to you, you can see that they're hurt. If it's your own
Right.
body, you can be like, yes, it's it's my arm. My arm is killing me. But with the anxiety, it's just like, it's almost maddening a little bit because it's just like, what is happening to me? Like what, there's nothing physically wrong with me, but something is wrong. And,
Yeah.
and it's
You,
just so
you have
hard.
anxiety?
I, I've gotten a handle on it, but I used to be really anxious, and
Wow.
you know, and I used to like hate going out and hate being around people and things like that. Like, you know, like having to be in a crowd of people was just like excruciating for me. Which nobody would understand because I'm so good at seeming like I'm really outgoing and friendly and great around people. It's funny, I was thinking about this the other day. When I was in university, like I had a few friends that I felt comfortable with. And if I had plans and they invited other people to come, I would cancel and I wouldn't show up.
And
You
now
know,
you're going and like, wow, that was a symptom, right?
you know what I mean? And like, and they thought that I was a bitch. You know what I mean? Like nobody realized that like, no, it just was so uncomfortable for me, you know, to be around new people or be around people I didn't know or yeah. You know, it was funny. It's funny that we're talking about this because I was thinking about this like yesterday or the other day. I was like, wow. I was like, how many plans did I cancel? Like, because I could do the one-on-one with the person that I knew and the person I was comfortable with, but anything beyond that.
It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But so the Brave was such a great book. I immensely enjoyed it. And now you have another book coming out. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this one? And you said it's in the same world as The Brave, so it takes place at the same school that our lead character from The Brave moved to when he went to go live with his mom.
Mhm. Yeah, it takes place in Duluth, Minnesota, which again is funny because I'm kind of trying to give my characters a childhood that I never had because my family's from there. So
Yeah.
a lot of things I find out later, like, oh, that's why it's in there. But yeah, this is called The Second Chance of Benjamin Waterfalls, and it's another Native American story, middle grade, where it's kind of autobiographical because growing up really, really poor, I stole a lot. I was like really good at stealing. I wouldn't say kleptomaniac because it never became, I had to do it, you know? It was always actually probably a kleptomaniac would say that. Like I could quit whenever I want. No, but it's about a kid that steals a lot, and he gets sent to um, live with his father, who his father and him had a big falling out, and his father ended up looking like going back to his roots, the native I'm Ojibwe, so Anishinaabe, going back and learning that way of life. And he kind of rescues his son to try to teach him the old ways, and seeing how even a modern day thing like stealing can be cured through the old ways.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm so excited. It's available for pre-order. When does it come out?
I think it comes out April 2022.
Okay. Okay, great. So we'll have all the links below. We'll have the links to your books, the links to your films. And can we find you on social media? What are your handles?
Yeah, I have Facebook, Instagram. I never know what my handles are. Instagram.
Okay, you don't have to look it up. I'll include everything because we're connected on social media also. Well, this has been such a wonderful chat with you today. It's super inspiring. It's amazing how far you've come from your childhood.
If kids just rejection and like rejection, disappointment, and failure, if you just stop caring about those, you know, it's normal, it's human to care about them, but if you stop making those the dead ends, then I think no one on earth is born to stop you, you know. And realizing that, it's a really cool thing because uh, people think rejection means it's over, or failure means the end, or disappointment means it's not going to work. If you just get used to them in a way that, like food, you got to eat your vegetables, but nobody likes their vegetables, but you eat them and you get stronger. Same thing with rejection. You eat it, you get stronger, um, failure, you eat it, you get stronger. Like now I don't care at all about
Well, and it gives you
failing or
that freedom. It gives you that freedom not to be end gaming, end
yeah. And
gaming
then
is,
if you don't stop, no one's going to stop you. So you will reach where you want to go, as long as
yeah.
you don't stop yourself, eat your vegetables.
That's amazing. Well, I think that's a really good note to end on. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This was so inspiring to me, and I hope inspiring to everybody else who tunes in.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is really cool. I
Yes.
haven't seen you since France.
I know. 2018. You had We Are Both screening there, your feature film. I had my short film Details screening. And yeah, it was good times. Well, hopefully, once this pandemic is over, we will meet in France again with our next projects.
That'll be nice.
So, yeah, thank you, James. And thank you all out there in the interweb for tuning in. I would like to challenge you to do something you never thought you would do. Let us know what it is in the comments and where it leads you, and have a magical day.